Alright, Steve, we got a little bit of a logistical problem coming up. It's a couple days before Christmas, and I need to take the time to go up and visit some family, so I'll be gone for the week. I know you well enough by now to imagine that you're not going to take the week off, and you're going to work on putting that ballast keel mold together. And that means you're going to need to do something that I know you're not going to like. I'm going to need you to tape yourself putting that mold together.
Can you see the GoPro back there? I'm literally videotaping myself. I feel like ridiculous right now, but that is the price to pay. Oh, my finger is in the way there. I'm terrible at this. All right, before we get to the video, check this out. We've gotten all these comments in the last week. It's crazy. I can't believe we've got all these comments in the last week alone. It's nuts. And that's just YouTube. That's not through the email or through the website or through Patreon, like just the YouTube comments. So you got an idea, and we think you'll enjoy it. So we've been doing the long videos every other week for the most part, and that works great. And we would love to get something out to you every week, but it's also a ton of effort to make a video. It takes a lot of time. So one thing that we thought we could do to get a video out every week, which would be really fun, but to not kill ourselves doing it, would be to answer questions. So we can go through YouTube and we can go through the email, we can kind of just randomly pick some folks' questions and answer them in a short video. Or what we thought would be a lot more fun is if y'all sent us a video asking the question, and then we could put that video in our video, and you get to see yourself on the channel and other folks get to see someone else's faces besides just ours. So if you have a question, we would love for you to send us a video and we can throw that in the video. We think that would be fun. And if you'd rather be anonymous, you can just shoot us an email. But we want to do that really soon and kick off the new year with that. So if you have a question, send it in ASAP and we'll do a little video about it. Thanks. I'm sort of getting used to Alix shoving a camera in my face, but this whole selfie with the phone thing is freaking bizarre. But Alix isn't here, so I don't have much option. I got a 4-day run with some good weather, and I'm going to try to make the best of it. So the goals are to finish chainsawing the lead, build the ballast keel mold, get the tank set up, and basically when Alix comes back next week from visiting his family in Maine, be ready to pour the keel. It's a lot of work. I'm not sure I'm going to accomplish it, but I'm trying really hard. So it's 7:30, day one. I've been up since 5 this morning. Spent the morning answering emails, which there are a lot of these days, and posting on the Wooden Boat forum. And had some breakfast, and now I'm in the shop. I got to sharpen up the chainsaw after cutting some lead yesterday, give that a tune-up, and the pull cord got stuck on me, so I got to take that apart and fix it, and let the rest of the town wake up a little bit. I don't want to be running a chainsaw at 7:30 in the morning. It'll kind of piss the neighbors off. But by the time I get all that done, it'll be a little later, and I'll spend the morning chainsawing lead. Hopefully I can get that done, and then it'll be on to setting up the smelter tank. Tomorrow the weather's supposed to be crappy, so it'll be a good day to be inside the shop and work on making the mold. All right, so it's 10:30 on day 2. I just chainsawed lead all day yesterday. I tried to get that old steel to work, but the spring, I think it might have been repaired more than once, possibly. That saw is like third hand to me. It's had at least 2 owners before me, so maybe someone tried to fix it at some point. So I went to get a new spring, and they're out of stock for a couple more weeks, so out of luck there. So I ended up using my good steel, which not psyched about, but gotta get it done. So I got all the lead cut up that we have, so that's 2 sailboat keels worth. I don't know, 6,000-7,000 pounds of lead, something like that. And that is what's next to me here. So I spent all day yesterday until dark doing that, and this morning as well I spent a couple more hours. So I just showered and cleaned up, had second breakfast. So each one of these blocks is, I don't know, somewhere between 50, 60 pounds and 100, 130, somewhere in there. Some of the bigger ones have pieces of keel bolts still in them, so I had to cut wide. I didn't want to hit that. Did a couple times. That really puckers up the chain. But otherwise, the lead cuts decently easily. It's not fun getting pelted with bits of lead traveling at however fast the chainsaw hurls them, but the task is done. I did wear a respirator and face shield and rubber gloves and as much protective gear as I really could put on, and try to do everything I could to mitigate sucking down lead dust. So hopefully I don't die here of lead poisoning. Time will tell. Now getting ready to switch gears and work on the ballast keel mold. Alright, so down in the wood yard here, you can hear the tractor running in the background. I don't want to shut it off because it doesn't really like to start in the cold. And it's much better if it stops and doesn't want to run up at the house than down here. I don't have to lug the battery all the way back. So yeah, it seems we got a whole bunch of pine here to pick from. So I'm gonna grab a few more boards so that we got plenty to make the mold out of. The rest of today and tomorrow are supposed to be crappy, so it's a good time to stock up on lumber and hole up in the boathouse and try to get this mold built. So we'll see what we can find. We're gonna find some stuff that's decent shape, but a bit more knotty than we would use inside the boat, but still thick and strong and clear enough that I think it'll hold 10,000 pounds of lead. We'll see. All right, so collected a few boards here. I got some thinner ones that I can use on the outside of the mold to cover up the seams. And I got one more really thick one that I can use to help build a box out of. I've got, I think, 3 or 4 more thick ones up at the house already. So this was kind of extra. I don't really know if I'll need it, but I'd rather have it and get it now than come back when it's sleeting and raining and snowing in a few hours. So that should give me enough lumber. It's awesome to have this giant pile on hand. It's a little tough to sort through, but it's great to have such a big supply of lumber. So I'm gonna go jump on the tractor here, head back up to the house, load all this lumber into the boathouse, and start figuring out how we're gonna make this mold. So before I can really begin making this mold, I got the lumber in here, but I need to clean the shop a little bit. There's just kind of stuff everywhere. So I'm gonna take 10 minutes here, crank the tunes, clean the shop up, or clean the boathouse up, get a little more organized, and then dive into making the ballast keel mold. So my goal is to between today and tomorrow to get that done. So hopefully today I'll get things rough cut and the lumber prepped, and then tomorrow I'll do the assembly. We'll see. In theory, that's the plan. That's the hope. We'll find out what happens. All right, so the shop is clean and I have the lofting floor uncovered to reveal the drawing for the ballast keel. Now to you at best that looks like a bunch of scribbles, but I promise you there's enough information here to get us everything we need to make the patterns for the ballast keel mold. And some of these patterns we already have because we've done this process sort of once, and I saved those, thankfully. So if we come in a little closer, let's say here at station 7, and see station 7, we have the bottom of our keel in profile view, and then we have the top of the keel in profile view, and then these yellow lines represent the top and bottom of the keel, their half breadth, their width at station 7. So the bottom of the keel is double this distance at station 7. The top of the keel is double this distance at station 7. So what I need to do is measure and mark all these points, and then I can plot them on a piece of plywood. And then we'll end up with patterns for basically the end of the mold, a couple down the middle, and then we can start building off of that. Alright, and after much measuring and marking, we've got our 6 patterns that are going to give us the shape for the ballast keel mold. So these are them. Now we're going to take the, we actually have to add some to them because the shrinking from the lead. So we're going to lay it back down and add probably another, I think, 1/4 inch to the bottom and 1/8 of an inch to each sides. And then I'll have to cut them out. So hopefully we'll finish that up today. Alright, so I got all the patterns cut out. So, starting 28.5 inches forward of station 5, we have our first mold. Then station 5, 6, 7, 8, and 8 inches after station 8. And those are all of the forms that are going to give our ballast keel mold its shape. So now I got to get these laid out where they need to be and start figuring out how I need to cut and mill that big pine so that I can start boxing in the sides. Yeah, but making progress. All right, almost lunchtime on day 3, and we got something that's starting to look like a ballast keel mold. So I got all the stations set up and some rough cut plywood for the outside, and I've got some pine milled to go around that to add some strength. So in a little bit here, we'll start kind of fiddling and see if we can put it all together. So here is the start of the ballast keel mold. So there's the forms inside that are helping define the shape, and the plywood sheathing. And if we pop over here, we've got a bunch of planed up, nice thick pine boards, and that's going to become the structural part of the box. And this nice smooth plywood on the inside should give us a really good smooth mold. And it is gross today. It's all icy, rainy, bleh. But thankfully, in the shop, in the boathouse, it's all nice and dry. All right, we're getting closer to something that looks like a ballast keel mold. We have all the internal frames in there. Those will eventually come out. They're just helping to give us the shape. And the plywood's loosely put in there for now. And then this wide planking's got to get fit around to the outside of it. And the trick's going to be keeping the mold in shape and the top of the mold flat while bending that pine planking into place. So we're using the workbench here as a bit of a strong back, and it's about time for some lunch, and then we'll dive into that. But I feel pretty good about it. There's a lot more work to do. I don't know if we'll quite finish it today, but hopefully by the end of the weekend we'll be done with the ballast keel mold, which would be sweet. Alright, so it's the day after Christmas, and I think it's day 3 of working on the ballast keel mold. We actually got something that's starting to look like a mold. So we're looking at it, it's upside down right now, and we've got to do a little more framing. There's one more layer to add onto the bottom, and then I can flip it right side up and take the molds out of the center, and then fit the caps for the ends that make the jog that the rest of the deadwood fits against. So I am no artiste, but this is kind of what the basis of the mold looks like. So we have a plywood liner on the inside, and that gives us a nice and smooth surface for the lead. And it also gives us an uninterrupted surface all the way on all 3 sides except for the ends. And the one seam in the middle, because the plywood's only 8-foot sheets. And then later we're going to fit a little radius into the corner here, a little piece of molding. And that'll help get us that shape for the rounding of the bottom of the keel. That box and molding sits inside a heavier wooden box, and the seams, as you can see, are staggered. And then the last thing I'm going to do is fit one more cap across the very bottom of it. And then this little pencil mark basically represents the seam on the outside planking. So if the lead wants out, it has to slip past the molding get past the plywood, make another angle to get past the plywood and down the lumber. Then it's got a big wide pine seam to get past, then gets into here, and then it's gotta go over. And then once it gets out to here, it's just surrounded by dirt that we'll pack around. So instead of focusing on like crazy tight joints, I'm going for decently tight joints and making sure that this lead, if it wants out, has a really circuitous route that it has to go to. And by the time it hits the dirt, it should have solidified, and we might get some little cracks and some little funny bits of lead, but all in all, it should add up to, you know, only taking a few pounds of lead to fill those voids, and they should solidify and basically self-plug, which should be good. So one of the tricky parts with the ballast keel mold is keeping everything in alignment. So earlier I had made basically partitions that go inside the box that define its shape on the inside, and then bent the plywood and the planks around it to give us the shape. And what happened is as I bent those planks, those frames inside want to slip up and down and escape. Which for most of the build, it's fine if they go up or down a little bit. But towards the end here, where we really need to like tighten and button everything up, I got to make sure that they're all in line so that we end up with the correct shape for the ballast keel mold. So what I did here is I have one set of clamps that are basically pushing down on the bottom of the keel mold, and they're pushing this board down into the box. And then I have another set of clamps here that are set up on a block in the bottom. There's a block underneath here that's pushing up. So by tightening these and loosening these, or vice versa, I can make those molds inside travel up and down inside the box. And then that in turn ends up pushing this in and out a little bit, and I can line up everything where it's nice and equal and where I want it. And once I had that done, I went through and screwed into the sides and solidified that as its home. So now I'm going to undo the clamps. I got to fit a couple little shims here on the side where the sides are a little too short. I'm going to plane the edges of this nice and flat, and then put one more cap board over the whole top of that. So if the lead wants to get out of the mold, it's got to kind of, you know, do one of these things. And by the time it gets to the dirt, it should be very cool. It should solidify, and any holes in the mold should basically plug themselves. I think that's a lot simpler solution, putting like 3 layers in there and packing it tight in dirt, than trying to get joints that are so strong and so tight that they'll withstand packing dirt around them, and they'll withstand 10,000 pounds of molten lead being rudely dropped into them, and the steam screaming and escaping out of the wood. It just doesn't seem like, I don't know, that's going to be an easy task. So making a really robust box that has a lot of layers inside that lead has to go through, I don't know, seems like a bit of a better option. We will find out. So here we have the almost completed ballast keel mold. So I got to get some corner molding to put in the very bottom edge there, where you can see there's a little bit of a gap that'll help close that up. And it'll give the bottom of the keel a bit of a rounded edge, which we want. And we'll have to plane off less once the keel's done, once it's cast. And then I got to make the nib ends where they end up getting attached, fitted into the deadwood. So those will basically just be stops that get fit into this box, and then we'll pack the tops of them full of dirt. But I feel pretty good about it. The lead's going to have to work decently hard to get out of the box, so by the time it gets out, it should hit the dirt and cool and solidify and self-seal. That's the idea, at least, with burying it in the ground. So we'll see what happens. But I think it's cold today. It's like high of low 20s, same tomorrow. So sun's starting to get low. I think it's a good time to pick up the shop here at the boathouse and go make some dinner, call it a night, and hopefully wrap this up tomorrow. We'll see what the weather brings. So it might almost be too cold to work out here. We'll see how it goes.
And here's the final product with what we're calling the nib ends and the corner molding installed. With the mold finished and the lead all cut up, we're a couple of steps closer to pouring our keel. Remember to send us your questions via email or video, and tune in next week as we fashion our new smelter tank. If you haven't seen the test pour with the old tank, you should go check it out. It got fairly interesting.
Here it comes, you hear it? Getting heavy. Okay, up. Well.
We're also going to need to go back to logging to stock up on more lumber. With the ground too frozen to bury the keel mold,
and temperatures too cold for sustained work out in the boathouse, it'll be the ideal project for this winter.